Hello guys, welcome back to another review. This week we have the latest Bloomburrow release. I believe it's the last one. We had the normal set, we had the commander and special guests. I guess they were in the main set as well, and now we have the alchemy cards. So we're gonna review them in regards to Brawl. This time around there's only 3, so we can go more in depth into each of them, and also doesn't take me 45 minutes because they decided to print 37 freaking legends. So yeah, we have 3 different ones. We're gonna get started with Buxton, the decorated host. So it's a rabbit noble 4/4 for 5 mana with convoke. That's nice. And at the beginning of your end step, if you control a tapped creature, seek a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less, where X the number of tapped creatures you control, and you put that permanent on the battlefield. So we wanna get tapped permanents, and we want to have permanents worthwhile finding in our deck. So we want expensive permanents, right? We want to be able to get an everything from our deck for free or something along those lines. So we want things that get value from being tapped, way to tap our creatures, and big permanents. So obviously we have the likes of Amaro. It's going to be making tokens, which is a good way to get creatures, a lot of creatures, because we want a lot of creatures to be able to tap them so we can get the biggest stuff. So we have obviously Amaro, we have Willy Duke that gets value from being tapped. It's going to draw a card and gain you a life. We have the likes of Seasonal Borrow and Pest Infestation, and a plethora of green-white cards that create tokens. And then to get them tapped, there's different ways. Obviously you can just attack if you have a bunch of pump spells for tokens, so like Intangible Virtue, not Intangible Virtue, it gives Vigilance, I'm not sure now. Anything that pumps your creatures, obviously you can attack, they're going to be tapped, and you're going to be able to get a bigger thing from Buxton. But other ways would be Warden of the Inner Sky, can tap 3 permanents, and then Cryptic Fluorite, gonna make all your tokens into mana producing tokens. So then you can tap them to play more tokens, to which then you're gonna have a bunch of tapped creatures to get a big thing from Buxton. Then what are we getting? Well, that really is up to you. Since it comes in your end step, you don't want the likes of like Crater Hoof Behemoth. You probably want to play Crater Hoof Behemoth in your deck if you go deep in the token spot strategy. But it's not a good card to get at the end of your turn. So things that have ETB effects always gonna have a lasting effect until your next turn, and then will help you close out the game. Those are the ones we want to go for. An interesting way to build that I'm probably gonna try is to minimize non-land permanents in my deck, so that Buxton is more likely to get the non-land permanents I want to get, like the better ones. So like the likes of Amaro, Willy Duke, I might not play those cards. I might just play sorceries and instants that make tokens. So then when I do eventually get the trigger from Buxton, I'm not going to be getting a 2-drop or a 1-dropping Warden. I'm going to be more likely to get a 5-drop or a 6-drop because since it gets mana value X or less, so even if you have 15 tapped creatures, they could just get you a Warden. It's random. So I would try my best to minimize the number of permanents. I think that's potentially the best way to build this, but I'll have to see. It comes out later today, so I'm gonna be brainstorming the decks, especially Buxton. But yeah, that would be my goal. A bunch of token generators, ideally instant and sorceries, so we don't have bad permanents to get with Buxton later on in the game. Up next, I have Ines, the Hydrostatic Surge. So there's an auto incarnation, a 5/5 for 6 mana. When it comes into play, you conjure, I don't know how to say the word, lightning bolt into your deck, and it gains Storm. For those of you that haven't played with Storm cards, well, I guess there's an explanation here. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. So if you had Storm and I cast 5 spells before it, I'm gonna copy it 5 times, so I get 6 lightning bolts, for example. Another important part of the card, whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, draw a card. So what do we want to do with Ines? I think the way I would go would be trying to get the bolt into our hand as quickly as possible by casting as many spells as possible, and also ways to reuse that bolt. Since we're going to be drawing cards every time we cast a spell, we want cheap cards, so we can just, in that turn we can get cast like 5 spells for 5 mana, draw 5 cards, and if it's these kind of cheap spells, you're going to be looking at so many cards, more likely to find a lightning bolt, more likely to end the game very, very quickly. We want ways obviously to make our spells cheaper, so we have the likes of Elude that will make at least the first spell cheaper. You can have the medallions. I guess mana dorks also work. Well, mana dorks, mana artifacts. So we have Mind Stone, we have Arcane Signet, things like that. So we just want ways to have so much mana that we're just gonna rummage through a whole deck, fight a lightning bolt, and probably one-shot our opponent. On top of that, since we're going to be casting a lot of cheap instant sorcery, Brawl gets very good, because then we're very likely to get the ultimate quicker than you'd usually get in Brawl decks. Storm Splitter, same kind of idea. You're going to be casting a bunch of instant sorcery, so you're going to keep making copies of Storm Splitter and just sit for a bunch. Thousand Edge Storm works in the same idea. You're going to be copying everything costs. Reservoir, if you're going to be casting a lot of cheap spells, you're going to be drawing a lot of extra cards, you're going to be able to gain a lot of life very, very quickly. And if you're not under pressure, that could just win you the game. And if you're under pressure, that's going to take the pressure away from you. The other way to also get advantage, since you're going to be drawing a lot of extra cards, is to have something like the First Tutelage. Could end the game. You could have the 2 mana one that makes 8/8. You could have the 3 mana one that you pay 1 mana when you draw a card to make a 1/1. Things like that. So we want to rummage through our deck, and we want to get value as well from drawing the cards. So I think that's the main way to build. I do like the idea of the First Tutelage as the alternate win con. I wish they had Sphinx Tutelage in Arena, but I don't believe it's in Arena yet. That will give us double the win con there on the same kind of axis. But yeah, cheap spells, a bunch of 1 mana, everything that says draw a card for 1 and 2 mana, you probably just play it in the deck just so you can rummage through your whole deck as quickly as possible. And then you have obviously like Mizzix's Mastery to kind of recast everything in your graveyard, since you're gonna have so many of them. You're gonna go crazy there. And yeah, that's how I would build Endress. And then the final deck, we have Eru. I want to say it's Eru. Is it actually Eru? Don't know. Acorn Scrounger. So another squirrel commander. 3/3 for 4 mana. When it comes into play, you may forage. For you guys that don't know what forage is, you can either sacrifice a food token or exile 3 cards from your graveyard. And if you do, you forage. And when you do forage, you conjure, don't know that word. I can't name Chitter Spitter onto the battlefield. If you guys don't know what Chitter Spitter is, this is Chitter Spitter. It's a 3 mana artifact, and at the beginning of your upkeep you can sacrifice a token. If you do, you put a acorn count on it, and squirrels you control get +1/+1 for each acorn counter, and then you can pay 1 mana to create a squirrel. Easy enough. Other part of Eru is whenever 1 or more squirrel deals combat damage to a player, you can sacrifice a token. If you do, you put an acorn count on each permanent you control, named Chitter Spitter. So every time you cast an Eru, you're going to get a new Chitter Spitter that's most likely going to stick around because they're not easy to get rid of. And then every time one of your squirrels deal damage, those Chitter Spitter keeps getting bigger, making your tokens bigger, and then the Chitter Spitter is making more tokens, so on and so forth. So you're going to get a huge army. So I think this deck is pretty straightforward. You're going to build a squirrels deck with a forage sub-theme, not even sub, probably just a forage strategy in there. So obviously you have all the good squirrels, Camellia from the new set that also works with sacrificing food and also forages itself. Squirrel Sovereign, just a lord, Cheddar Fang, just going to be making you more and more tokens. And then we just want ways to get cards in the graveyard, because it's very important to forage. When we play Eru, we want to be sure that we can forage. It would really suck to play Eru and not be able to forage. So Grizzly Salvage, 2 mana, put 5 cards in the graveyard. Ripples of Undeath, at every turn you're going to be milling 3 cards, which is perfectly enough to feed the forage ability. You can obviously also play Igra in this deck, because it's going to make all your tokens into food, or your creatures into food, and then you can sacrifice those creatures to Eru, because that counts as foraging, because it's a food. And then we also want to get value of putting counters on stuff and creating tokens. So obviously doubly season. If you're going to put an extra acorn count on Chitter Spitter, it's actually going to put 2. And if you're going to be making a token of Chitter Spitter, we're actually going to be making 2. Pearl Lives only works with the tokens, unfortunately doesn't work with the counters put on Chitter Spitter. But yeah, pretty straightforward deck, Squirrel Tribal with a focus on milling and foraging, which kind of like Camellia, but I think Eru is the better commander than Camellia. I think between Eru and Shadowfang you have more of a debate, but I do put Eru ahead of Camellia as your squirrel commander. But it's really cool that you have at least three different ways to build squirrels. It's really up to you. I will definitely be trying Eru. Don't know when. I am low on the wild cards, but hopefully soon. But anyways, if you guys did enjoy the video, do leave a like, do subscribe. Tomorrow we'll be doing midweek magic, and we'll be still uploading Brawl decks every week. I'm aiming for 2 or 3 videos a week nowadays. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, do leave a like, do subscribe, and do let me know which one of the 3 you're going to be building and which one would you like to see me build first. And until next time, adios.